You are living in the first civilization in history where being superficial has become a profession. While our ancestors developed tools to survive, we developed filters to exist. Humanity has created something unprecedented, an entire society functioning as a giant mirror where everyone looks at themselves but no one sees anything. It is no coincidence that we live in an era of greater access to information and simultaneously of greater functional ignorance. Vanity has become the new opiate of the masses, and its dealers are the algorithms that turn insecurity into profit. Schopenhauer warned that all satisfaction, or what is commonly called happiness, is properly and essentially always negative, never positive. Today we have discovered what he meant. An entire generation seeks happiness through the denial of reality, hiding behind edited versions of themselves. The result is an epidemic of existential emptiness disguised as self-esteem, where millions of people confuse digital approval with personal worth and superficiality with sophistication. Open any social network, and you will see the new economic system of humanity working in real time. It is no longer competence, knowledge, or contribution to the world that determines someone's social status. It is the ability to transform one's existence into visually consumable content. We live in the first era in history where knowing how to pose is worth more than knowing how to think. This inversion did not happen naturally. Society deliberately created a market where appearance has literally become a commodity. Influencers sell products they have never used to people who cannot afford them, based exclusively on the aesthetic quality of their posts. A pretty face with zero intellectual substance has more commercial credibility than decades of real experience in any area. What makes this even more absurd is how it has shaped our relationship with reality. People no longer live moments, they produce content. Every meal needs to be photographed before being consumed. Every trip is planned thinking about the photos it will generate. Every experience is filtered through the question, will this look good on my feed? Real life has become just raw material for digital life. Nietzsche said that vanity is so deeply rooted in the human heart that it is the most difficult of all passions to subdue, but he never imagined that one day it would become a business model. Today, vanity is not only accepted, it is monetized, encouraged, and transformed into social aspiration. 10-year-old children already dream of being influencers, not scientists, doctors, or artists. The economy of appearance has created a complete distortion of human values. Time, energy, and resources that should be invested in personal development, genuine relationships, or meaningful contributions are wasted on an endless performance for an audience that is too busy staging their own performances to actually watch. It's a theater where everyone is an actor and no one is an audience. This new social currency has a particularly perverse characteristic. It creates dependence. The more someone invests in their own image as a source of value, the more dependent they become on external validation to maintain self-esteem. It is a vicious cycle where the solution to the insecurity generated by the search for approval is more search for approval. And so an entire society is trapped in an infinite loop of superficiality, unable to break the cycle because it has confused prison with freedom. There is an immutable physical law that governs human consciousness. Mental energy spent on trivialities is energy that is not available for important matters. When someone spends 3 hours a day organizing their digital appearance, that's 3 hours that haven't been invested in reading, reflection, or real intellectual development. Vanity functions like a cognitive black hole that absorbs all available attention. Observe anyone obsessed with their own image. They live in a constant state of aesthetic concern. How do they look now? How do others see them? Did their latest post get the expected engagement? This obsessive mental cycle leaves no room for deep thoughts, philosophical questions, or the development of any real competence. The most tragic thing is that vanity feeds precisely on the insecurity it creates. The more a person seeks validation through appearance, the more aware they become of their imperfections, the more dependent on external approval, the more time they spend trying to correct imaginary flaws. It is a perfect system of intellectual self-sabotage. Dietrich Bonhoeffer observed that superficiality is the curse of our time, and the only salvation is depth. But we live in exactly the opposite. A culture that systematically rewards superficiality and punishes any attempt at depth. Making a literary reference has become pedantry, demonstrating knowledge has become arrogance, questioning popular trends has become negativity. The human mind has a limited capacity for conscious processing. When this capacity is constantly directed towards cosmetic concerns, it is simply not available to process complex information, make deep intellectual connections, or develop critical thinking. It's like using a supercomputer exclusively for solitaire. It technically works, but it represents a monumental waste of potential. The practical result is devastating. A generation with access to more information than any other in history, but with less ability to process it meaningfully. They master all the tricks to appear intelligent online. They know which memes to use, which phrases to quote, which positions to adopt to maximize likes. But they can't sustain a deep conversation for more than 5 minutes without checking their cell phone. The irony is brutal. In an era where information has never been so accessible, we have created a functionally ignorant population because all their intellectual energy has been redirected to maintaining a digital image. They know everything about aesthetic trends and nothing about the real world. They know all the available filters and no basic philosophical concepts. They master the art of appearing interesting, but have not developed any genuine interest in anything. The dependence on external validation has created something unprecedented in human history, a generation of voluntary slaves who cannot make a decision without consulting the opinion of complete strangers. Every choice, from the clothes they wear to the opinions they express, is filtered through the question, how will this be received by others? This slavery is particularly insidious because it disguises itself as freedom. People believe they are expressing themselves authentically when they post selfies, when in reality they are just performing carefully edited versions of themselves that have been pre-approved by the social algorithm. Authenticity has become a trademark, calculated to maximize engagement. The process of identity formation has been completely corrupted. Teenagers and young adults who should be discovering who they really are instead discovering who generates the most likes. Personalities are built through engagement metrics instead of genuine self-knowledge. The result is individuals without a core, without a center, completely dependent on external approval to have any sense of identity. The approval of others has become a behavioral drug more addictive than any known chemical substance. Each notification triggers a small dose of dopamine. Each like reinforces the behavior. Each positive comment intensifies the addiction. And like any addiction, it develops tolerance. It takes more and more approval to achieve the same level of temporary satisfaction. Schopenhauer predicted this when he said that reputation is like a shadow. Sometimes it follows us, sometimes it precedes us, sometimes it is larger, sometimes smaller than ourselves. But he never imagined a time where people would literally sell their souls for a digital shadow, where the opinion of strangers would carry more weight than their own conscience. This dictatorship of approval has created completely artificial and unstable personalities, which change according to the trends of the moment. There are no longer solid personal convictions, only performative positions that can be abandoned as soon as they go out of fashion. Personal integrity has become a luxury that few can afford in a society where inconsistency is rewarded as long as it is aesthetically pleasing. The most devastating thing is to observe how this affects real relationships. People who spend hours creating posts about authenticity and self-love are unable to maintain genuine relationships because they are constantly performing even for themselves. They don't know who they are when no one is watching because they never learn to exist outside the gaze of others. The end result is a population of social ghosts, individuals without real substance, completely at the mercy of the oscillations of public opinion, living borrowed lives based on digital personas that not even they believe in, but of which they have become prisoners. We live in the most absurd paradox in human history. We have never had access to so much knowledge, but we have never despised real intelligence so much. Entire libraries fit in anyone's pocket. Complete university courses are available for free online. But millions prefer to use this revolutionary technology to photograph their own face 500 times a day. This reversal of priorities was not accidental. Genuine intelligence requires something that the culture of instant gratification abhors: effort, discipline, time, and above all, tolerance for frustration. It is infinitely easier to post a selfie and receive 200 likes in 5 minutes than to study for 5 hours to understand a complex concept that perhaps no one values socially. Critical thinking has become socially inconvenient because it naturally questions the superficial foundations on which our society is based. A truly intelligent person will question why we spend fortunes on cosmetics while schools close for lack of resources. They will perceive the psychological manipulation behind aesthetic trends. They will see through the digital smoke and identify the existential void that social media tries to mask. Therefore, intelligence has become subversive. It directly threatens the economic system based on compulsive consumption, fueled by insecurity and constant comparison. A truly educated population would not buy unnecessary products to impress people they don't know. They would not spend 8 hours a day on apps specifically designed to create behavioral addiction. They would not confuse appearance with competence, popularity with value, or visibility with importance. The tragedy is that many genuinely intelligent people are being socially forced to hide their intelligence to fit in. Demonstrating knowledge has become pedantry, making cultural references has become elitism, and questioning the wisdom of the masses has become arrogance. Mediocrity has become not only accepted, but required as proof of humility and accessibility. Nietzsche warned that the individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. If you try it, you will be lonely often and sometimes frightened, but no price is too high to pay for the privilege of owning yourself. Today, fewer and fewer people are willing to pay that price, preferring the safety of the aesthetic herd to the solitude of independent thought. The education system doesn't help. Schools and universities, desperate for relevance in an anti-intellectual culture, have begun to gamify learning, turning education into entertainment. The result is generations of students who expect all knowledge to be delivered in digestible and visually appealing formats, unable to cope with the complexity inherent in deep thinking. Thus, we create a society where appearing intelligent has become more valued than being intelligent, where quoting motivational phrases counts more than understanding philosophy, and where depth has been sacrificed on the altar of popularity. Knowledge has become just another aesthetic accessory, used to decorate social profiles instead of transforming lives. There is a reason why all authoritarian regimes in history attacked intellectuals, artists, and thinkers first. People who develop the ability to think critically are inherently dangerous to any system that depends on unreflective conformity. Today we have discovered something even more effective than direct persecution, creating a culture where thinking deeply is less rewarding than appearing interesting. The obsession with appearance is the perfect tool for social control because it operates through what people believe to be personal empowerment. No one feels oppressed when they choose which filter to use or which pose to strike. On the contrary, they feel they are expressing individuality and creativity. But this supposed individual freedom is, in fact, a sophisticated form of behavioral programming that keeps millions of people focused on completely irrelevant aspects of their lives. While the masses are busy deciding which angle makes them look thinner, they have neither the time nor the mental energy to question why they work 60 hours a week to buy things they don't need, why their wages don't keep up with the cost of living, or why politicians promise change but only perpetuate the status quo. They are too busy performing happiness to realize they are not happy, too busy staging success to notice they are being systematically exploited. Vanity functions as a social narcotic that keeps the population in a state of permanent semi-consciousness. People feel that something is fundamentally wrong, hence the global epidemic of anxiety, depression, and body image disorders. But they are conditioned to direct this unease towards cosmetic solutions instead of structural changes. They trade revolutions for aesthetic procedures, demonstrations for makeup, critical thinking for criticism of their own faces. The system feeds back on itself in a brilliantly perverse way. The more people invest in their own image as a source of self-esteem, the more dependent they become on the validation that the system itself offers. The more dependent, the less likely to question it. It is a cycle of voluntary domestication where the victims themselves finance the instruments of their intellectual subjugation. Dietrich Bonhoeffer realized that Against stupidity, the gods themselves contend in vain, but he was referring to involuntary stupidity. What we have today is more sinister, voluntary stupidity, where functionally intelligent people deliberately choose to focus on trivialities to avoid the discomfort of critical thinking about their own lives. The genius of control through vanity is that it doesn't need to be imposed externally. People choose it enthusiastically. No one forces anyone to spend 3 hours a day organizing selfies, but millions do it voluntarily because the reward system has been calibrated to make that choice irresistible. It's psychological manipulation disguised as personal freedom. Meanwhile, those who actually hold economic and political power operate quietly behind the scenes, protected by a population that has confused mirrors with windows and prefers to admire its own edited reflection rather than see the real structures that govern their lives. A society obsessed with itself has no energy left to watch its leaders or question its institutions. Nature is ruthless with those who build their identity on temporary foundations. Youth inevitably passes, physical beauty declines, filters can no longer mask the reality of time, and then comes the most brutal moment of truth. When appearance fails, what remains of a life dedicated exclusively to the surface? For those who have spent decades cultivating only the external image, the answer is terrifying. Absolutely nothing of substance. No real skills developed, no deep knowledge accumulated, no wisdom gained through experience, no lasting contribution to the world. Just the existential emptiness of someone who discovered too late that they built their entire life on quicksand. This is not just an individual crisis. It is a generational catastrophe waiting to happen. We are creating an entire generation that will face middle age with the existential terror of someone who realized they wasted the most productive and creative years of their life on empty performances for an audience that never really cared. The future depression will not come from the lack of likes, but from the brutal awareness that they never developed anything beyond the ability to appear interesting for a few seconds. Aging becomes an existential tragedy when the only source of self-esteem is linked to physical appearance. Without solid intellectual, spiritual, creative, or relational foundations to support identity, the natural and inevitable decline of the body becomes a total decline of the person. Old age, which should represent the pinnacle of wisdom and accumulated experience, becomes just a phase of aesthetic panic and existential despair. Schopenhauer said that human life oscillates between the two poles of need and boredom, but the vanity generation has created a third, even more devastating pole: absolute emptiness. It's not boredom. Boredom presupposes that there is something potentially interesting available. It is the complete absence of inner substance, the hollow echo of an existence lived only on the surface, without ever touching the bottom of anything. The final irony is cruel. People who have spent their entire lives trying to control how others see them discover, when it is too late, that they have never learned to see themselves. They spent decades adjusting the external image, but never developed any sense of internal identity. When the filters stop working and the likes decrease, they come face to face with strangers, themselves, who never bothered to get to know. This emptiness is not an accidental consequence of the culture of appearance. It is its logical and inevitable result. A life dedicated exclusively to the surface cannot, by definition, develop depth. An existence focused only on the impression it makes on others cannot cultivate personal authenticity. An identity built on external validation cannot generate internal satisfaction. The most tragic thing is that this fate is completely avoidable. Every hour invested in cosmetic self-obsession could have been directed towards real skills development, genuine relationships, useful knowledge, or meaningful contributions. Every moment spent healing insecurities through digital approval could have been used to build solid foundations for a purposeful life. But when appearance inevitably fails, and it always fails, all that remains is the existential regret of someone who traded eternity for instantaneity, depth for surface, being for seeming. And then, finally, it becomes painfully clear that the intelligence they despised throughout their lives was the only thing that could have saved them from the emptiness they chose to cultivate in place of a real existence. Before we say goodbye, can you calculate how many hours a day you dedicate to your appearance versus how many hours you invest in the real development of your mind. If this reflection touched something true in you, type in the comments, substance over surface. Don't forget to share this content with those who need to question their priorities, activate the bell, and subscribe for more reflections that challenge the superficial thinking of our time. See you in the next video.